people who are extensions of those who feel this way, or those who still have that oppressive attitude
Mm-hmm.
towards our people. And so I don't think he's necessarily, trying to tell him that, or trying to blame anything on anything, but I think he is giving him an education in which he has the education. He knew all the answers. He knows what's going on. However, there was always a but. There was always, yeah, you're bringing this up, but we have rights. You're doing this, but we can still get jobs. You're doing this, but black women are the most educated women. Why would they allow them to be the most educated women if they, you know, um, Michael Jordan, great black basketball player, but guess who signing them checks? Okay, these record labels. Michael Jackson, we just saw Michael Jackson. Wonderful. I'm going to see it again this weekend. However, we all know that this man bought somebody else's catalog and they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want him to have rights over this catalog. So we have to understand that it continues to happen. It will continue to happen, but we have to be aware, and we have to have the knowledge, and we have to have those in our corner who are going to understand the struggle and not try to act like it didn't exist. So,
Especially when you're the only person positioning yourself in those certain areas, right? Like, so, like for example, it's me and one other lady. She's a black lady. Like, we're the only two black folks on the team.
mhm,
And, you know, it's just like they don't want to give us the work that they're doing because it would take away from them, and it would, basically, um, you know, it, it happens in all areas of work. But you still have to push on, right? Like, you can't just let that stop you. You have
right,
to you
right,
have to keep you have to keep learning. You have to keep growing. You have to keep doing these things, right? Because that's how you're going to get ahead. And like, what good what good is it going to do to sit here and blame people? All it takes more energy to be negative than it does to be positive.
that's true. My mom said
Like,
all the time. Ooh,
so
ooh, well, something's falling here. Okay, Leon, do your thing. Hold on.
yeah, so I mean, when I look at, I mean, I grew up around people who had that mindset of, oh, they don't want me to have the job. I said, well, maybe you're not preparing yourself. Maybe you're not doing enough to shine. Because really, when you're going to an interview, like, you're trying to beat most of the people that they've interviewed. And then if you're the first person, you really have to show them that, look, all them other people you about to interview, they ain't got nothing on me.
Mhm.
Because I'm going to do the job. I'm do what it take. But that's just that's a mindset. And it's things that's like you have to learn, as you grow into like whatever field you're going into, right? Like, so it doesn't, it looks different in every career field. Like, if you're a plumber, you got to show them, you're the best plumber there is,
Yeah.
um, and they won't have a reason to not do it. So I think it's nuances to that conversation. And I understand what he was saying. Like, that's not happening now, but it's happening, but in different ways.
Yeah, it's happening in different ways. And at the end of the day, we will always have to do more. That's
Hmm.
just planted in our history.
Hmm.
It's not a blame game, it's facts. It's just facts. And then, then you take in consideration, okay, is this a man? Is this a woman? Like, it's a lot of different layers to it. So, I can see where this guy is going, and laying that history brick by brick for this young man.
Doesn't
But
mean
we're free. But you
okay.
said, but you said, listen, you said you don't like the way I talk about white people. And then you're bringing that it's better now. But the one black governor who is the organizer of the governors group was declined an invitation to the White House to have dinner with them.
Did that
But
show
you
on the
said
Westmore.
I
show?
so
What'd you say?
So he's talking about Wes Moore. He's the governor of Maryland. He's the only black governor in the United
In
States.
the United States,
Hmm.
and was not invited
Yeah,
to a dinner where other
to,
governors are.
exactly.
So I mean, that's a clear indication, that hey, something's up. I even have the same credentials as you. If anything,
Hmm.
mine is a little bit more special because I'm the only one. How
Yeah.
do you not see that as oppressive behavior?
Hmm.
How do you not see it as that? Um, and I believe the young man tried to use that as an excuse, but again, sometimes you got to sit and listen to people who have a little bit more wisdom than you and just be quiet. Right? Sometimes you just got to say, you know what, I can understand, because people who have more wisdom are going to they're going to give you a perspective that you don't even know of because you never lived it.
Hmm.
Right? You've never even really lived it. Maybe you don't have again, you got adopted by a white family who you have no biological ties to. So no one is really going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like maybe they never even had those conversations about what happened, back in the day. He probably, I mean, he sounds pretty knowledgeable on certain things when he talks because he does know the history. So, um, you know, but like you said, you always want to surround yourself with people who have more wisdom and know more because you never want to be in a room where you're the smartest person in the room.
Right.
You want to learn from people. Like I learn from you every time, I'm on here, and on Wednesdays. So like um you just have to have an open mind to kind of listen and actually take it in and not be so quick to respond, right? It sounds like, as soon as the other guy is talking, he just kind of jumps in there like right away. you know, hey Chelsea, what's going on? So
Uh,
you, is you could tell the people who can't regulate their emotions, right? When they have these kind of conversations, these are conversations that are hard to have, right? Like so when they're talking about these types of things, it can, you know, the other guy on the phone, he is probably triggered a little bit, so he wants to respond so fast when he's not even like, he's not even listening to what the other guy is saying. He just, oh, the the main thing he was saying, like, oh, they're not doing that right now.
right. It's not happening now. You keep talking about 50, 40, 50, 50.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not
So
right now.
like,
That's all
yeah,
done.
so
Here's a Men in Black pen. Doop. Like let's erase history. Like no, that's
right.
not how that works. There are still people who carry around those attitudes and those behaviors, and while they may not be loud in your face because you were in a family of white people, right? You may not see it up close. However, they may treat other black people a little bit differently than they treat you because you are now legally joined to their family. And even that doesn't matter sometimes because
Especially like when he not around, what are they doing? That's the one thing I was fearful of, when people are adopted by people who aren't, same race, don't understand the background. How do they treat other people when you're not around? It's just like, I don't know if you ever been on a date with somebody who was very rude to like the waiter or whatever. I instantly, I instantly leave that person alone. Like after that date, I don't, and I said this a couple times. Integrity is what you do when nobody's looking.
mhm,
Like how you treat older people. How do you treat your parents? How do you interact with people on a regular basis? You know, like most of the time when I go like to a restaurant, I sit at the bar,
Hmm.
and because I want to watch like whatever sports is on, right? So if somebody's around me, I'm going to try to spark up a conversation, or I'll talk to the bartender or whatever. Because you don't know like what people are going through, and just having a conversation or just smiling and saying, "Hey, how's your day going? Are you enjoying the game?" Or whatever like
Hmm.
you come up with, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I thought the guy, he was just too quick to respond and not actually listening to what he was saying. And you see that a lot on these panels and stuff. Like they always try to overtalk instead of actually trying to get the message.
Well, we're gonna see where he goes with this conversation because again, I believe this leads us into the conversation about adoptees navigating through the fog.
So can I call white people racist for that?
Yeah, you can call them racist for that,
But
but
you just said you don't like when I talk about white people.
I said I
But
don't
now
like.
I can.
I
So
said you
I
talk
need your
about.
so now I need your permission to talk about white people. Is that what
No,
you're saying?
so coming from someone who was raised by a white family, I don't like when y'all
Coming
get on these
from
panels.
someone that's raised by white people, that's why you'll never understand black people. And I
Right.
feel sorry for you. It's
Okay.
not your fault. Listen, and brother, I ain't angry at you. It's not your fault. I understand that for you, it's gonna be very hard pressed because you were betrayed by your black parents. So, and then you were saved by your white adopted parents. So I'm not being funny. I'm not being facetious. I don't know if you was listening earlier. I said, whenever you're talking to somebody, you have to understand their psychological position, why they think the way that they think. So I know that you think the way that you think because if black people loved you, then your parents would have loved you. Here's how. You believe in Christ?
Yes.
You believe what? Okay, good. That's good. Was Christ betrayed by his people?
Yes.
Did he say, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do?
Yes.
That's what you're going to have to say for your parents.
No, I'm not gonna
Yes,
say
you are.
that to my
Let
parents
me, let me,
because my parent, my parents didn't,
just let me finish.
my parents didn't do anything.
Brother, just let me finish. If Christ can forgive the people that set him up to be unalived, then we should be able to forgive our parents for the mistakes that they made. Because now, if you don't mind me asking, I don't know if you know or not, do you know why they gave you up for adoption?
No.
Okay. So now, if I was to just think about the black community, more than likely you was given up for adoption because they was too poor to take care of you or was not mentally fit to take care of you.
Can you
I
pause it right
myself
there?
have a
I don't like when people do that.
Do
Like, um, they try to assume like why you were giving up for adoption just because you have black parents. Like, it could have been their parents been like, "Oh, you're not having you're not having that baby. Like, you getting rid of that baby."
hmm
Or he tries to assume the situation that they were in. And he's probably right in a way, but there are tons of parents that will say, "Look, it's either the family or it's the baby."
Yeah.
And you know, and when you are actually, I can only imagine what kind of pressure that is at being a woman, right? Like being a mother, you just having a baby, and they're talking about, oh, it's the baby or the family. Like what?
Actually, that's what happened to the videos that we're gonna watch. And I actually edited a lot of her story out of it because her perspective actually came from a birth mother who gave up her daughter for adoption. So she calls herself first mom, birth mom, I believe is her name on TikTok. But that's a perspective that she came from. she was a Mormon, and they can't have no sex. Okay,
Mhm.
having no sex.
She was busting it open.
So away her baby had to go, and at this stage and age, I believe her daughter is 12 or 13. So she says that in the intro of these, but again, I edited them down so good that you don't even know that she's talking from her perspective. But she wanted to learn the adoptee's perspective because she had to give her daughter up for adoption, to adoption. So you're right. You can't always, oh, I wish I had it. You can't always guess why children were put up or placed for adoption, or parenting rights were taken away, because 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, we talked about how caseworkers can flip the script. They can move some words from here to there. And I
Mhm.
saw something, and I meant to grab it, but next live, I'll definitely try, or maybe post it on my YouTube wall. It was the percentages of why children are placed into adoption, and I believe it was like 30 or 40% went into neglect. Now, neglect could be characterized as you need mental health services, you can't afford them. That's neglect. You don't have enough money for groceries, your children aren't eating, the way that they should be in a healthy manner. That's neglect. They put a lot of things underneath of neglect and say that is the reason why we need to remove your parental rights, when in fact, not having enough money for groceries is not necessarily neglect. I mean, in my mind, I don't see that as neglect, but that's how this man was breaking it down. And again, I'm going to have to find that video. But
But
it
if you don't have food, like that's malnourishment.
it is malnourishment, but again, at the same time, you know, th- are the parents given the resources that they need to you know
Right, I
make
see what
up
you're
for the
saying. Yeah, I
difference?
see what you're saying.
So it's like, do you want to rip them kids away, or are you going to assist this mother in some type of way so that she can keep her children with her? you
That
know
was actually one of the reasons that the girl in Baltimore, um, her parents were actually trying to get her help because they didn't really go into like what she was actually doing, like far as her behaviors and things like that. But they were actually trying to get her resources. They were trying to get help for her. They were trying to get mental help for her. And they said for months, like they had been begging the state and, they were not doing anything. Um, but yeah, to say, they do look at neglect in different ways because there was a video I was watching the other day. I think I sent it to you where the guy was basically they would go like to the store. They lived in the country. They would lock her up
hmm
and they would go to the store and they would come back. The only reason why they got caught is because they had another car and the mechanic was coming to work on the car and I think she had yelled out or something or he had seen her and that's the only reason she'd probably still be locked up to this day because
yeah.
of that. But that was good on him because he actually took action, and actually said something, and that is the biggest thing, right? A lot of people will see things and they won't say anything,
hmm
but kudos to these folks that are actually saying things and doing things out here, in the real world and not just talking about it.
yeah. um Because that, I mean, that's actual neglect. I mean, you
Hmm.
locking somebody up and then you leaving them, you're neglecting them. Like,
Right, right.
neglect, abuse, like, a lot of things can fall underneath of that neglect category, and that's what the courts use to then determine,
Hmm.
and you can shift these words into a a case,
Hmm.
and the caseworker reads it, God forbid, you switch caseworkers. Now you have a whole new person on the case, and the new person
Gotta
is just
start all over.
all over again. You got to get to know the child. You got to go through home visits. You got to, you know, and some people don't even do that. They go based off of what's on the sheet. So if on the sheet they're having, a horrible week, and the next week it's like, okay, they're a little bit more mellowed out. It like, children's nervous systems are like seesaws when it comes to foster care and adoption, because of all the transition and all the changes and all the movement. It's hard to get that nervous system balanced out, to a consistent level.
And I'm gonna say, shout out to this book that you recommended, The
Oh,
Primal Womb.
yes.
I'm in chapter 3 already.
Really? You like it? I'm telling you, it's a staple in
It
the
is,
adoption community. That's always the first book that is
I think,
encouraged.
when you are going through those emotional roller coasters, you don't know what it is. You don't know, like, you don't know the verbiage of like what it's called, right? So, like, when I was reading it and I was looking back and I was looking back at all the things that happened, I was like, oh, so that's what was going on. Okay, okay, that makes sense. It all coming
Mhm.
full circle.
Yep.
And so yeah, like when they, um, when that guy was talking, um, he was too quick to like not acknowledge what happened in the past. And there's different ways they maneuver today these days, right? Like, so they may not outright do things, but they do it in different ways. And I
Yeah.
think he wasn't acknowledging that. And I think, to your point, it's just you want to be around smart people. You don't want to try to be the smartest person where you are.
Yeah. And not even, just smart or intelligence, but you want to be around people who can tell you the truth about your history.
Hmm.
Right? So being adopted by white parents, I'm not saying that they're not necessarily telling him the truth about his history, but when you also have someone who can, I always talk about sympathize and empathize, right? If you have people in your actual family who can tell you about that. I remember interviewing my grandmother growing up for a project, right?
Hmm.
And the way that she described her time, or back in her time when the Emmett Till situation happened, and the way she described it to me, she remembered exactly where she was. She remembered exactly what the atmosphere and the environment was around that time. Having someone to explain that to me in their own experience gives me the sympathy as well as the history of what was really going on with our people. In today's society and today's history classes, they want to cut out a lot of different history. Even
Hmm.
if they want to take down certain memorials and certain, placards and things that are celebrating celebrating Black history. And it's like, oh no, take it down. No, put it up. No, take it down. Put it away. Lock it away. And it's like, why don't you want this history to be known? Why are you trying to erase it from the reality of our people? And so, we got to be careful about that. I saw a lady post about a project that her daughter was doing in school, and they told her that she couldn't. It was a woman's history project, but she couldn't talk about Black women. And she was like, "Huh?
Huh?
What do you? How did your teacher tell you that I can't, or that you can't do a project and reference a Black woman?" And so she turned it all the way around and she referenced a white woman who helped out Black women. And she's like, "Well, why did you do your project on that?" And she said, "Well, you told me that I couldn't do it on a Black woman, so I did it on someone who actually helped our community." and
Mhm.
that should be, recognized as well, because
Mhm.
all community don't give her no love, pretty much is what she was saying. So we have to, it's not always about being even with someone that's smarter, but someone that can really give you firsthand experience and knowledge about, certain things as well, because experience is a good teacher for many.
Yeah, my mom, she was a real good storyteller. Like like you said, your grandmother, my mother was the same way. Like if she seen a picture, because we used to take a lot of pictures back in the day. So like if she seen a picture, she could tell you the exact moment, what was going on, like where it was at, whose party it was, who was at the party, like literally a
Head on.
summary. Yeah, like it was amazing, like how much she knew um, just by seeing a picture. You know.
Mhm. Yep, it stays in your mind.
I had a father that was a complete heroin addict that abused me, not sexually, but physically, beat the shit out of me from a time I was like 2 until I was 12, 13 or 14 was the last time that he really put hands on me. And the only way that I was able to be a better man was to forgive my father. It freed my mind. So you can't let your anecdotal experience of what your parents did to you affect how you look at black people as a whole. You're going to have to forgive your parents. If you believe in Christ and you believe in the Most High, you're going to have to forgive your parents. Your parents made a mistake, but you know what they did do? They blessed you with life. You're
Can I
only
ask you a
here.
question?
You're only here. No, you cannot. You're only here
Man,
because of them.
let me know. What the
And
black
because
city that
yeah,
y'all
yeah,
talking
no
about?
problem. I know you can go. You can leave
Which
now.
one?
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is my thing, right? And I don't want to keep you on too long about this topic, but I
Okay.
just wanted to let you know that, and I'm telling you from what I see when my parents care about the black community, and when they see y'all generalizing, like for example, when y'all say all white people are racist, when y'all make those general statements, I just want you to know that you're hurting people that actually care about the community. If she didn't care about black
With
people, she wouldn't
everything
have
that I
adopted them.
said, you didn't say nothing about having compassion on your parents. You want me to have compassion on white people. Are you going to have compassion on your parents that gave you up for adoption? Are you going to forgive them?
Why would I care more about people who gave me
Are
up
you
than
going to
people who
forgive
raised me?
them?
And I'm
So
asking you, why would I care more?
if you hate your parents, you have no position to come and tell me to love white people in America when the condition that we have been in is a direct reflection of them. Even your white parents are able to adopt you because their white ancestors oppressed your parents so much so that they don't even want to raise children. So now, because they got the freedom to adopt a little poor black kid, I'm supposed to forgive them because you became their pet?
Now I ain't like that part. You could have kept that, Mr. Sir.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
say he
come
had to be
on, bro.
that. You just rubbing in, the what the language and the verbiage that they use on us. So I didn't like that part necessarily. Um, However, him
I
addressing.
do agree that he should forgive his parents for because he doesn't know. I mean, even if he does know, like he should still like I talked about this a few times. It's about peace, right? It's
Mhm.
about peace inside of you. Like because um if he doesn't forgive his parents, you know, I don't know how old he is, but like that's going to eventually it's going to start to eat away at him. It's inside like um and that's another thing I don't like about when people be hosted. I'm not saying you, but like people who host, they always try to throw digs at people personally instead of keeping the conversation where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, like he didn't have to go and say all of those things. He could have said something different because, like, yes, it's important for him to forgive his parents. Like that is a key aspect of growth, right? Like, so if you can't, and I'm be honest, there are going to be some people who are adopted. They will never forgive their parents. Like
Hmm.
whatever whatever the scenario is, right? They just have it like in their heart that they are not going to be, they're not going to be the bigger person and forgive their parents for whatever transpired, right? But I was never like that. So I knew at a certain point in my life that I was going to have to forgive my parents. I did. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Yeah, I mean, my heart's clear with both my mom and my father, my biological mother and my biological father. Heart and mind is clear, you
Hmm.
know. And you come to a point where you accept, and we're going to talk about this in the fog phases, but you come to a point where you accept that no matter what the story is, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, you can't, I think it's unloving to expect something from someone who can't give you what you're expecting or what you need,
Hmm.
right? A lot of us adoptees and children who are in foster care just want our moms, just want our dads. That's just all we want. And we don't realize in those young phases and stages and ages that they don't have it to give to us, right? Some like my dad, he didn't even know I existed.
Wow.
And that's the case for a lot of adoptees.
Hmm.
It's like the mom made all the decisions, dad went on with his life, and possibly 30 years later, ta-da, that is the case for a lot of adoptees. And we get to a point in our lives where we go through this fog. And so that's what we're going to be covering tonight, the fog that we go through. And I wanted to cover that first video because the fog is actually coming to terms coming to terms about how adoption has affected you in life. Okay. And for many people, there was a positive effect from adoption. And
Hmm.
then even in those same people, while there's a positive effect, they completely ignore the negative effects. They're there, but they're only going to focus on the positive effects. There are people who focus on positive and the negative. And at some point, they get to their healing journey, which is the 8th stage of the adoptee fog. But we're going to start with phase 1. Like I said, we'll probably get through phase 4 till phase 4 this evening, and then we'll pick up from 5 to 8 on a second part of this. Again, the lady who is reading these phases, she actually gave her daughter up for adoption because she was of the Mormon culture in which she could not keep her child out of wedlock. Before I put her up on a stage, I do want to read this. Now, anyone can access these 8 stages, 8 adoptee fog stages. Is actually on adoptionsavvy.com. And you'll find the printout PDF that I'm looking at right now. Fog phases for the adult adoptee. Coming out of the fog, which is fear, obligation, and guilt, for an adoptee occurs in phases as awareness emerges and one confronts, processes, and accepts the impact of adoption on their lives. Just like actual fog, there are blurred lines around these categories. Not every adoptee will experience these phases as described in the sequence or in the same intensity, but the overwhelming majority of adoptees report similar trajectories. For those raised in abusive adoptive homes, these phases are increasingly more complex and fractured, making them even more challenging to identify and move through. Adoptees in reunion and adoptees in reunion or late discovery adoptees and those with a DNA surprise may be catapulted into any fog phase at any time. Phases 1 through 4 represent the first steps around awareness and the impact of adoption. For some, these first phases act as a subconscious strategy to protect from facing the deep pain experienced in phases 5 through 8. All right, so we're going to be turning up the heat little by little in these phases. All right, and Leon, you definitely stop me we're going to talk about phase 1 through 4 right now. Definitely stop me when you need to stop. If you recognize that you have gone through this phase, definitely let me know, because I'm gonna let y'all know. If you have any questions, put them in chat, but we're gonna get into it. Okay, we're gonna get into it. So about to get into phase.
Out of the fog for an adoptee occurs in phases as awareness emerges and one confronts, processes, and resolves the impact of adoption in their lives. Phase 1 is called disengaging. The adoptee does not consider adoption to have a positive or negative influence on one's life, does not notice or acknowledge ways adoption may have impacted them, has little to no interest or curiosity about their race, ethnicity, culture, biology, etc. There's a big one. Lack of engagement around adoption issues keeps the adoptee from making the connection between their struggles with anxiety, depression, intimacy, etc., and their adoption.
All right, so phase 1 is
Coming in strong.
disengagement, right? Disengagement. Adoptees
Uh,
consider adoption to have a positive or negative influence on one's life. So, what do you think about your adoption? Is what I'm just another kid that needed a home and got it. Do you think that's very nonchalant? Do you
I
think it's
mean, what are you supposed to say?
passive?
What are you supposed to say?
I, I, what are you supposed to say? How much time you got? That's what I would say. How much time do you really want to? Do you really want to know? Because I think sometimes I think as adoptees, especially as adoptees, right? We don't talk about our stories. These are not conversation starters, right? Nobody has a conversation starter around adoptees, around adoption, right? Because to the world, you're normal. Even to your parents, you're normal. You're just one of the kids. You're just part of the family now. And so when someone asks you, how do you feel about your adoption? And that's why I always say early and often, tell them early and often. Because then you get to a point where it's just like, what am I supposed to say? Because you don't have the vocabulary, the verbiage, the conversations that actually cultivate an environment where you can be comfortable talking about something that you're going through that other people don't necessarily are going through. Or if they're going through it, they're not comfortable talking about it. So you don't know that they're going through it, but y'all going through it together and you won't even know y'all going through it. So now you have no one to lean on. You have no community to help you and back you up and stand, behind you and say, I got your back. I know today is probably rough for you, but I know what that feels like. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of this stuff is new for me because um, I knew I was adopted. I didn't. I ain't gonna say I knew, but like when I started
you were
becoming
told,
aware, like
right?
yeah, when I started becoming aware, um, all this stuff, this fog stuff, I made up the Twilight Zone because that's how I felt. Like I felt like I was in outer space trying to get to Pluto from Earth, like and going around Saturn and dropping back into the sun. So like when I say that, it's a emotional roller coaster. Um I didn't even know it had a name until now.
Mm-hmm.
So um yeah, we never really talked about like those. Well, let me say this. I don't remember having these conversations. Maybe we did, and they just don't recollect in my mind. But these um, these words or these phrases or these different scenarios or things that I've been reading about lately, I didn't know that they existed, and now that I'm reading about it, it actually it's kind of come full circle, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like when you can actually look back and it's like when you take a course, right? When you're in college, you're just trying to get through it, right? You're trying to study, you're trying to make sure you can pass. But the key is when, let's just say, 2 years down the line, when you can look back or you can say, oh, yeah, I remember when I did such and such, this is what I did. It is the same thing. It is when you are going through these emotions and you can actually read about it and somebody actually breaks it down and actually tells you what it is and why you were doing it. That's why I got to give a shout out to this book again because a lot of the things that I thought about, I didn't realize that, these were stages or these were things that, were clinically like, you know, thought out or like put in stages, right? Like, so when she's talks about, was it disassociation? I
Yep.
think it was.
That's the first one, disengaging.
Yeah.
Adoptee does not consider adoption to have a positive or negative influence on one's life. Adoptee does not notice or acknowledge ways adoption may have impacted them. They have little to no interest or curiosity around their race. Does it sound a little familiar? Ethnicity, culture, biology, as it may differ from their adoptive family. Lack of engagement around adoption issues keeps the adoptee from making the connection between their struggles with anxiety, depression, intimacy, etc., and their adoption.
And that's always been my biggest concern is medically because I didn't know, you know, what I was um I knew like growing up, like if I ate certain things, right, like I was, I not feel good. I knew like that, but like from a deeper perspective, what what are my family traits as far as medically and things like that. But now that I'm reconnected with my sister, thanks to you,
Not
shout out to you.
look, there's so a lot of this is you too, okay?
But um I can ask those questions right now. I can engage with her and try to get as far as I can, right? Because, there are some limitations. So, disengage, what it like what does she consider like disengage? Like does she consider disengage like a mental state where you're like not connected with your adopted family, or are she just
No,
saying like
disengagement for one is almost like, the not almost like, but can be considered what the young gentleman was doing, pretty much saying like it doesn't matter that I'm adopted by a white family, you know. I have the same freedoms. I have the same liberties that they have, um,
right?
and ignoring the impact that is happening to you because you were adopted by white parents, and it's not making it a negative thing. So I don't want adoptive parents in a situation such as that to hear us, speaking and think, oh, why are they talking negative about, you know, black adoptees having white adoptive parents? Is not talking negatively about that. It's talking about the obvious, right? We
Mhm.
talked about this before. Or the people who say, I don't see color, right? That's disengagement as well on the adoptive parents end. I
Mhm.
don't see color. That's not a sentence that you should use around your adoptee, because if you say that you don't see color, then in a small way, you're telling your adoptee who you are and your individuality. I don't see that. I see you as one of us. Brown skin and all. I know it's brown. But when you with us, you good. You got our covering, you got our backing, you got our protection. So we don't see color, right? I think that's a very disengaging statement to make to a little brown girl or a little brown boy that you have adopted. And by all means, the adoptive parents may mean well, but when you come into the adoption community, you have to understand how your words, your ad libs, the things you say under your breath, the little
Mhm.
phrases you just want to throw in there and think nobody listening or hearing you, or you think you just talking underneath your breath. The adoptee absorbs all of that
Mhm.
because it's almost like being alone in the room and you just holding your when you get adopted, it's like, okay, who can I trust? Who are you? So we observe a lot. And you know this, it took you a while to even speak. And so during that whole time you were observing, your nervous system was trying to regulate and make sense of everything, So
Mhm.
that's disengagement. And again, she was talking about her perspective as being a birth mother who gave her child up for adoption. And so her disengaging was, okay, well, I did the right, I made the right, and she was talking about how society would make her feel like, okay, you made the right decision. If it wasn't accepted in your culture or in your religion, then you giving the child up for adoption was the best way to go. And so you go on about your life, the child will have a great, happy life. And that's this disengagement
Mhm.
of not being able to actually sit with what the reality of the situation was and how it affects you. That's the fog. All that really is, and the fog, FOG, means fear, obligation, and guilt, right? All the fog means is how you are accepting your story. Because again, all of our stories begin with loss. No matter if you were adopted as a baby, no matter if you were adopted at 5, no matter if you were adopted at 10, 13, 14, or never adopted, right? Your story, who you are, begins with loss.
Mhm.
You're already starting off with a deficit. And so when that is not addressed, then you will again go into these different phases of fog and you're not realizing why you're feeling stuck or why and things in life can throw you into these different phases as well. Like when I met my biological sister and when she called me, that threw me into a fog for sure. Because it's like, whoa, okay, I'm living this life with my adoptive parents and my brother. And then I'm in college and I'm going to school one day and somebody calls me and tells me that they're my sister. Now it's just like, hold on.
Er.
Reality as I know it has turned into a different reality, or not a different reality, but a different piece of who I am.
Mhm.
My reality is now showing face. And so now I'm thrown into the fog because you get consumed with that. Anybody who has tried to reunite with their family, you and I included, you get consumed. And I remember looking for my father for years, sending a letter and the letter being returned. And you get consumed in looking and searching for this information that sometimes you got to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm going to put it down. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to search. I'm not going to think. I'm not going to have these thoughts. I'm just going to just let God be God. And then you be like, nah, but you update. He's like, nah, let me just put the name in one more time. Let me just see if something else comes. You get consumed in that. And it's not a bad thing nor a good thing. It's part
Or
of
when you get them little hints from Ancestry DNA, you click that
you
email
like,
right away.
what side of the family is on?
Uh,
But yeah, and then it can definitely send you into a fog. And the first stage of this fog is disengaging, meaning I'm not going to even acknowledge how adoption has affected me. That's how you
Mhm.
disengage. I'm just like the birth kids. Don't classify me as anything else. I'm one of your children. We're going to keep it at that, right? And a lot of times I know personally, and you can speak from your personal experience, but when you don't acknowledge those feelings that you truly feel, but you're on the surface, you're acting like they don't matter, they will show up, whether it's health, stress, you start doing things in private because you're not being authentic and real with those around you. And so now you could be drinking, or you could be smoking, or you could be popping pills, or you could be, out all night, or you could be a glutton. You just want to eat all the time. Like, it don't even have to be drugs or alcohol related. It can spiral into a behavior that you cultivate all by yourself, and only you know about it, right? Don't nobody else know that I like to, eat little Debbie's all night, every night. Don't nobody else. That's my little secret.
Don't
But
be
you're
telling my
doing
secrets.
stop. You're doing that because you are not engaging with who you are in totality. You want to be accepted by the masses. And so you say that you are who everybody says that they are because you're all in the same family. And the reality is you're different because you were adopted. These other children, maybe the biological children are not adopted. They don't have to, worry about diet changes coming from a different home. They don't have to worry about adjusting and fitting in. It's crazy how, like, when you have your own child, like, that child doesn't have to worry about fitting in. Like, how should I be around my mother, or should I call her mom, or
Hmm.
like, it's just crazy the different, being someone who's adopted and having my own child. It's like, dang, like, I really had to do things that she's never gonna have to do, and she doesn't even have to think twice about being my daughter. Like,
Hmm.
it's just a natural, for one, we look alike everywhere we go. Y'all are twins, y'all are twins. You look just like, so disengagement is the first phase of the fog, because when you're driving through fog. I was driving through fog the other night, Saturday, when I was coming back from the Michael Jackson movie, and I'm like, all right, at one point, I was going a good 60. And then another point, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to hike it down to about 55. I could barely see. Got to put on my windshield wipers. When you go through the fog, you can't go fast. You can't see far. You can't see, at a certain distance in front of
Hmm.
you. And so if you're going to, disengage altogether, you're running from that fog. You're probably not even, if I didn't want to get through the fog, then I would have had stayed at the movie theater until it was clear, closest clear, no rain, clear skies, and that just wasn't the forecast for that night. It
Hmm.
was foggy. So I had to get through the fog. And so with getting through the fog, engagement, you're going to have to engage with who you are as an adoptee, even adoptive parents. It is your responsibility and your duty to tell your children early and often that they are adopted. Tell them that, they have two mommies and two daddies, and why, why you love them, and how you're loving them, and explaining how big of a family that they have. A lot of this comes when you seek after the knowledge and those who are trained to be able to give you the vocabulary to then give to your children, because you just started reading a primal womb, and so many doors and windows are opening in your mind that you never even knew were printed inside of a book. And that's how I was when I started reading adoption literature, because it was just like, whoa, these people know what I'm going through. What?
Where this been all my life? What the heck?
Right, like, what? And I'm a self-help junkie when it comes to Barnes and Noble. So when I actually started diving into who I was, that's when I started becoming hip to all of this because I'm like, okay, I'm like, is it the Bible that I need to read? Is it these books at Barnes and Noble? I'm like, what is it? And then I started getting into adoption literature, and I was just like, wow, like nothing I've ever read. I feel like I couldn't have put it better into words than they do. These authors and psychologists who are cited in these books, and that write these books, because it's like it's literally like our hearts to their pen to the paper. It's like, wait,
Exactly.
and imagine if adoptive parents were given this literature when they adopt, right? Nice little goodie bag, you know. Here's a primal wound. Let's read it as a family. It's things like that you can still read things like that with your family without it being awkward, without it being weird, or you can read it in your own private time and then be able to discuss what you read with your family to let them know that you are trying everything in your power to understand who they are, even though you didn't birth that person. And that is all adoptees want, is for you to have that intimacy without it feeling forced, but it being feeling natural. And it feeling like something that you are wanting to do and not something that you feel like you're forced to do. Or you know how when someone doesn't know how to do something, they're like a little scared and they're like, should I do this? And kids can sense that. Kids can sense when you just winging it, man. They can sense when you just like, I don't have the words. I don't know if I should put my arm around her, if I should just, just stand here straight up and down. Like kids can sense all of that. And so to get ahead of that, definitely immerse yourself in adoptee literature, because there are a lot of people who have the wisdom that we speak of. Even wisdom that we don't have. We don't have it until we go get it, and we don't have it until we experience it. And so the first phase again is disengaging. The second phase is going to be denying. Hold on, let's get to some of these comments. Same Precious, my friend who is a therapist, got me on all these psychologist books. Yes, it clicked in college for me when I was learning, about the different phases of development for children and things of that nature. And I was like, wait, hold on now. Back it up, because I didn't go through this. What why did I miss this stage? Where was I? Like, I think those books should be read, adopted or not, so all equipped with the education on adoption. Yes, because you're going to have people around you that are going to be a part of the community who don't talk about it, who don't express it. And like Leon said earlier, it's like, how do you talk about that? Well, you talk about it by being very comfortable and familiar with it. And your voice might crack when you first start, but if you keep going, you'll find more confidence and you'll be able to speak to anyone about it, because it's something that you have embraced about yourself, and it's something that you have literally accepting adoption really is your freedom. Accepting what you have gone through is really the gateway to healing.
Number 2, denying. Adoptee knowingly or unknowingly denies any issues surrounding their adoption. May feel a fierce sense of loyalty, obligation, and or gratitude toward either adoptive or biological family. Dismisses any internal or external cues or reminders that adoption may have played a significant role in their story. Adoption may be seen by the adoptee as having only a positive influence on one's life or no impact at all. Phase 3, defending. Adoptee is resistant to any suggestion that adoption may have an impact on one's life. Wants to be considered no different than people who were born biologically.
I thought you was going to stop it at that one.
I can. Yeah, just let me know when you want me to stop. I was just going to keep going because not defending, denying and disengagement, to me, not to say that they're the same. Hold on. Not to say that they're the same, but at the same time, when you're disengaging, I guess denying is a little bit more of a disengagement is not acknowledging it at all. And denying to me is pretty much saying, no, I'm good. I'm good. Literally saying the opposite of what the situation is.
I felt like those were some repetitive words they were using. Like because I don't know if she wrote this or if somebody else wrote it and she's just reading it. But yeah, I felt like some of the words that were mentioned in number 2 are really a part of number 1, to be honest. I mean, because like, when are you supposed to have these feelings or know that you can have these feelings or thoughts? At what age is it appropriate to really start to, these are hard conversations, right? Like, so you can't, this ain't just okay, let's go to McDonald's and go get a Big Mac. These are conversations where Yeah, the adult has to really immerse themselves in the literature, the learning, the education, because they're going to be the ones that really have to drive this point home. Um, like, what age do you feel would be appropriate to talk about this to someone that you have adopted?
So the fog, right? A lot
Yeah.
of adoptees don't know that they're in the fog until life events happen. So I think it said it in the beginning. Um, it says here that the overwhelming majority of adoptees report similar trajectories. For those raised in abusive adoptive homes, these phases are increasingly more complex and fractured, making them even more challenging to identify and move through. Adoptees in reunion, late discovery adoptees, and those with a DNA surprise may be catapulted into any fog phase at any time. And so I think it's more so life. Where does life have you right now? If you're in an abusive adoption home, then you're definitely going to go through a fog if there is a reunification that happens, or like myself, my sister calling me, and that was probably the first time I had someone with the same DNA as me reach out to me. So now it's like, okay, how do I exist between both of these worlds, right? Like, how do I navigate being a daughter in this world with adoptive parents and my brother, but also being a biological sister to someone that I don't know, but I do want to create a relationship with, because this is my sister, literally, the closest sister to me in age. It was hard navigating that, especially in a home where, again, we didn't talk about our former life. Like, we didn't talk about
I'm Joan of Arc. This is my former life.
right. We didn't talk about that. So now I got a biological sister reaching out to me, and it's like, we don't speak of those things. So now I feel like I'm navigating it by myself. And I have this, again, this little secret, to myself of, oh my God, I'm talking to my sister, the sister that they told me that I was going to get pictures of in foster care. Right. So,
Hmm.
like, when she starts to talk to me and I'm remembering back into foster care, and I'm like, you're one of the sisters that they told me that we would get pictures of, and it just never happened. And so then start piecing together little memories and things of that nature. Then you go to meet them. Necessarily at age, I think adoptive parents should educate themselves first so they can see what phase their adoptee is in. Because the adoptee is going to need someone to be able to observe them, to really to because
Hmm.
sometimes adoptive parents don't know how to be there for their adoptees. It's like, oh, she quiet today. I don't know whether to hug her. I don't know whether to go over there and talk to her. I don't know whether to cook for her. I don't know what to do. A lot of adoptive parents don't know, because at the end of the day, we're not biologically bonded. So there are things that are not going to come natural to you. There are years lost. There is no bonding history. So you don't even know what I like, right? You don't even know what I react to and what I respond to. And so this learning and exploration is something that takes years to accomplish. And I think that if adoptive parents were just more aware of the different phases and stages that adoptees go, because let's say this too, the adoptee is not the only person going through these phases, stages, and ages. The adoptive parents are too, because as you go through it, they got to go through it,
Because
it's
they're
one.
trying to figure out, like, okay, what is happening? Like,
Yes, it's not a one-sided thing. It's not just, adoptee hear me roar. It's like, no, adoptive parents are screaming for their lives too. Like, what do I do? Right. And what you do is you pick up a book, You go to an adoption therapist. You literally seek out the knowledge and not just listen to the floor base level of the adoption agency telling you, get
Oh, it's gonna
going.
be great.
Time will heal all wounds. You know, they give you this like, you'll be great, you'll be okay, you'll be fine. Mind you, you have this whole human being, sometimes two, sometimes three. In our case, it was two, it was me and my brother. And we both came from two different backgrounds of foster homes. So we were two different kids that ended up in the same house, biological brother and sister, with parents we don't know. It just was an adjustment, you know, and it's not just us going through the adjustment, the parents are going through it too. But you shouldn't be afraid or scared or embarrassed or feel less than for not knowing,
Mhm.
because just like we don't know, how we going to expect you, we don't know each other, man. We don't, how, we got to work together, we got to be a team on this, right? And so
Mhm.
I think another thing is adoptive parents really have to tend to the emotional needs of their child, because if you don't tend to the emotional needs of the child, then you will find yourself disengaging, um in a way that you don't think you're disengaging. Adoptive parents don't think that they're disengaging, they think that they're still loving, but the adoptee will definitely disengage because emotional needs are not being met. And remember, our nervous systems are just emotional roller coasters. And so the nervous system first has to be regulated. And the only way that that is regulated is if your needs are acknowledged and if you are validated in, you know, what you went through. And again, I grew up in a home where none of that was talked about. We not talking about what happened back there. We only going moving forward. And so
Mhm.
it was a little difficult to go through the transition when I wasn't allowed to look back and kind of catch up to, you know, make sense of what was going on in my life. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I had emotional issues. I was mad. I was angry. Get out my face. Get out my face. I don't want to talk to you. You know, that's how, if my parents were here right now, they would say, oh, Michelle, she was hard. She didn't open up. She didn't connect, but it wasn't, they didn't either. Not in the ways that I needed them to. They opened up their house, yes. They opened up their finances, yes. But when it comes to the emotional need that your children have, especially when you adopt two at one time, we're two different kids. So what my brother may have needed may not be what I have needed, and vice versa. So these are all things that you have to be willing and open to even considering as an adoptive parent. You can't think that you have all the answers and that it's going to be, you're going to ace the test. This is
Mhm.
not that type of story. No. Every adoptee's story is different. Even if you have two of the two biological children in the same home, our stories were still different, even though we coexisted and lived in the same home. We also experienced our parents differently, just like Gabar Mate was saying. You
Mhm.
know, the way that we experience our parents, we're different. Doesn't mean that they love me more or my brother more. We just experience them differently, my brother and I. And so all of these things have to be considered. It's not just oh my God, my heart is telling me I need to adopt a child. Well, your heart is telling you that you're going to probably go through heartbreak too. And that's just the real of it. Seriously, your heart is probably going to break before it actually feels full, because when you don't know someone, you have to literally, like a relationship, go through all the phases of getting to know someone. And doing that with someone your age is already difficult. So how you think it's going to be with someone that's 20 years, 25 years younger than you and can't really express to you how they feel, you know? Or if they do, some parents don't take well to it, you know. They don't know how to respond to those negative feelings because they didn't cause those negative feelings, right? They didn't cause the loss, but they benefited from it. And so a lot of things just have to be taken into consideration. And to answer your question, there is no particular age. I think is when the adoptee comes into awareness of how adoption has affected them. And you know, you can't just say, oh, it was a great experience. Okay, well, with good comes bad. With positive comes negative, with up comes down. So if you can speak about, and it's not that you're glorifying bad experiences, it's not that you're, make you're making your adoptive parents look like bad people. No, I per se am someone who advocates for the things that are not spoken out loud. Because if you don't speak the things out loud, you're not going to be able to heal them and get through them. What you don't confront, you don't heal.
Hmm.
It just doesn't get healed. And so I think that there are a lot of families that go into this thinking, oh, great, this is the date, signed, sealed, delivered. And then they get into it and they're like, yo, I didn't know it was going to be like this. And we're going through this right now. And our child is a little bit difficult and they're not listening. And they stay in their room all the time. And, and you don't, again, the adoptee is not the only person going through the changes. You as a parent are too. And so that's why it is so important to advocate for them in a way where you're seeking education and being able to include them into that definitely meets an emotional need, because you're saying we're in this together and you're not punishing them for the negative feelings that they're feeling, because at the end of the day, they just children. You done already lived 35 years and you decided to have children, which means the tantrums that children can throw. The emotional ups and downs that children can go through.
Hmm.
So throw adoption on top of that, layered with a little bit of foster care, and it's a lot, so it's open minds, open hearts, and just the ability to receive information and knowledge that you've never received before. Because again, you don't go to school and say, oh, I want to be a doctor, and just walk up in a hospital. No, your ass need to go to school for some years in order to be qualified to even put DR in front of your name. Okay, so
Exactly.
why do you think it's any different with raising children? Why don't you think that you need to see, even if they're your own biological children, why don't you think that you need to seek knowledge on the brain of a child? Why? Because
Yeah,
very
I
focused.
imagine, it could be just as hard for parents, right? Because like if you're just sitting there, like my case, you're just sitting there not talking, they don't know what you need. They don't know if you got to use the bathroom. They don't know if you want some cereal. They don't know if you want to watch some cartoons. If you want to go
No.
outside, they don't know none of that. But it is their it is their responsibility to figure out what the problem is.
Yep.
Because
Problem is, oh, sorry.
yeah, because like um I briefly remember this, right? Like so when I even though I had a brother, like I always was playing with playing with the toys by myself.
Mhm.
Sit in the corner and just be by myself. I wouldn't talk. I would just watch TV. Um, but they they knew enough about parenting to say that something wasn't right, and they took action.
Right.
And that's really what it really boils down to. They knew, like they just didn't, some parents they get a kid the iPad and say go in the room and play. They
Mhm.
didn't just do that. They actually paid attention to what was going on, and they say, oh, something's not right. We need to figure out what's going on, and taking action is way better than just going about your day, and just, oh, he'll figure it out,
Mhm.
because that's what they want you to do anyway. It's like they want you to figure out your life, right? Like they don't want to, like you said, have those hard conversations when it's time to. I'm not saying you got to do that at 6, 7 years old, but I am saying that you do have to have some kind of conversation that really acknowledges your experience, um, and to try to help you grow from what you had experienced and to help you be a better person, right? Like, so all of that is key and important.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely would agree. That education piece is very important. Seeking, there's nothing wrong with going out there and seeking the knowledge and, actually speaking to adoptees. I don't think that there are enough adoptee groups. I think that there should be way more than there are, because at the end of the day, we all experience adoption differently. However, most times when you hear about adoption from adoptees, most adoptees are giving you the real about their experience. Like, I don't really hear a lot of, I do hear, oh my God, my adopted parents were the greatest. I would have never wanted to, grow up without them, and da da da. And that's part of our story too. But at the end of the day, there are things that you notice that go unnoticed, in the adoption. And other people probably feel that way too. They probably have those experiences. And again, we talk about adoption and foster care, but you don't even have to be adopted to go through some of these things as a
Hmm.
kid. You go through these things right with your biological family as well.
Adoptee is resistant to any suggestion that adoption may have an impact on one's life. Wants to be considered no different than people who were born biologically to their parents. Doesn't want to be pitied. They may defend their adoptive or biological family, not wanting to hurt them in any way. Also may defend being adopted as something that makes them special, chosen, and or is God's plan.
All right. So defending is pretty much what it says. You're resistant to the fact that adoption had some kind of effect on you. And, you'll go as far as to say, like I said earlier, I'm no different than the biological kids. Don't look at me as the adopted kid. I'm no different. When in actuality, you definitely had different thoughts in those biological kids because you're not biologically related to the family. I know that me and my brother, right? My brother will say he's from South Jersey because that's where we got adopted. I'll say we're from North Jersey because that's where we were born. And so, that is a small part of defending, right? Like, am I supposed to say I'm from South Jersey because I got adopted and moved to South Jersey? Or do I say I'm from North Jersey because that's where I was born? We always have this different of opinion when it comes to that. However, again, that's a small part of defending, pretty much saying I don't come from North Jersey because I was taken away from there. That part of my life doesn't exist, or that part of my life is not enough to acknowledge, so I'm not even going to acknowledge it. Whereas I'm like, well, if it wasn't for North Jersey, if it wasn't for, that experience that our mother went through, there would be no now. There would be nothing to look back over and say, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
God definitely had a plan. I know this says, adoptees also may defend being adopted as something that makes them special, chosen, and or is God's plan. Well, I definitely do believe it is part of God's plan, because who could have orchestrated it? Right? Who could have orchestrated that I take a picture with a biological family member and then change my adoptive name back to my biological name on Facebook, and that's the exact family member who reaches out to me?
That's
What
wild.
person could orchestrate that? Right? Who could orchestrate that? Who could say, you know what, call her today, reach out, today's the day? Who could do that? So no one is ever going to be able to tell me that God is not real, because my adoption experience shows me that there were a lot of different things that happened that led us back to our origin story, right? And we didn't plan for it to be like that. Like, we didn't plan our lives to be like that. So there had to be someone greater involved. So, but a lot of people don't think that, but I'll always think that. I'll never, never not give God his glory and his credit in my story, because honestly, if God wasn't in it, I might be somebody that would hurt myself. I might be somebody that's drugged and addicted out because I couldn't handle my story. but with God, I can live through my story with grace, and I can, help others and be an advocate for others who are going through the same thing. And, know that adoption didn't scar me. It just gave me a different outlook on life, and it gave me a different perspective in life, and it gave me different opportunities in life, not because I was adopted, but because I was, relocated. I'm sure that it gave me a lot more opportunities than I would have had if I would have stayed in North Jersey. And so, we have to be able to, while we can defend those who have adopted us, we also have to not necessarily defend our birth stories or our origins,
Hmm.
but be okay that they weren't perfect, like the adopted family that we were adopted into. A lot of us who were adopted did not come from ideal beginnings. It just was not the, oh yeah, she should have stayed there, and not for me anyway. My mom was addicted to drugs. My dad didn't even know he was in another state. So, it wasn't the, oh my God, but why did she get adopted? It was like, yeah, she needed to be adopted. Like her mother couldn't take care of her. And
Hmm.
so instead of feeling shame or guilt or, fear or anything from our past, we need to be able to accept that it's a part of who we are. I have to accept that I was born with drugs in my system. Did I want that to be the case? No, but the reality is that that was what happened, and I can't keep defending a story that I was placed into and not acknowledge my true feelings of how I got there. And I think,
Yeah, I mean, it's we talked about this a few shows ago. When you look back and you look back at all of the stepping stones or points in your life where um if somebody wouldn't have said something or did something for you, you don't know what you don't know the outcomes, right? So those were just pieces of, you know, the Lord, like grabbing onto you or grabbing onto that person and saying, "Hey, you need to say something." But when you look back, right? I talk about it all the time. I was supposed to go to a party, didn't go to the party. I was pissed. Then I found out the party got shot up.
mm,
So that's a perfect example of how um, you are saved by the grace
mhm,
and you don't even realize it.
right.
And when you look back, you're like, man, all those times I was pissed,
Hmm.
but it saved my life.
Yep.
Um, what's going on, Machiavelli? What's going on, Mo Perspective?
Hey,
Go
hey,
Cree
hey.
Cree. I
I
don't
know.
know if she left. Yeah, but I mean, when you look back on your life, I mean, even for you personally, like when you look back and all of the things that you had to endure in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but now that you are a grown person,
Hmm.
like all of those events shaped your life, whether it
Definitely.
be good or bad.
Hmm.
Um, all of the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs, the emotional roller coasters,
Yep.
the your parents saying no all the time, and I know you have probably got plenty of stories because I do.
Yeah.
uh,
But like you said, it shapes us into who we are. And, while there were some things that were overlooked or things that, my parents probably weren't educated enough about, there were a lot of things that were great as well. And
mhm,
so, I can't take that away from my parents, because at the end of the day, how parents say we did the best that we can. I have to believe that that was the best that they could do.
mhm,
Like I can't continue to be like, no, what you could have did this and you could have did that. I think at a certain age, though, as adults, when you become adults, there is more that you can do because you see more, right? You see more out of your children. You watch them grow. You watch them go through different stages. So I do believe that, if you're able to be better as a person, not just even a mom, a dad, a daughter, a son, but if you're able to be better as a person for another person that you say that you love and that you're there for, I think that you should take the opportunity to do it. I think that
Mhm.
saying, I'm that's just not who I am and things of that, I think things like that make you go back into the fog because it's just like, okay, now I'm going to have to heal from the blockage or the non-existent progression of a relationship that you would want to progress, especially one that you didn't ask to be in, but that you were pretty much forced to be in. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But again, I can't take away the good experiences that I've had in foster care or adoption because again, a lot of adoptees do not graduate from college. I graduated from college. You know what I mean? A lot of adoptees are not able to live on their own because they are always wanting someone to be with them. They have attachment issues. I was able to live on my own at a very young, not very young age. I was like 19, 20. um but again, that was a part of me exploring me being an adoptee and not knowing my biological roots and not knowing me for me because I was placed into a family where I had now had to be a daughter and I could no longer be Michelle. Now I'm a daughter of so and so. And so that came with its own image. It came with its own, and rightfully so. I believe that families need structure and discipline and things of that nature, but you should still have some type of individuality. And parents know that they'll never say, oh, well, so and so is my favorite, but they know the characteristics of their children, right? And this child might have more, character or charisma than this child. And the characteristics of your children. And so you know them because they're all individuals and you allow them to be individuals. And so you know those are things that you learn when you're adopted and you go through this transitional period of maybe being in a foster home or maybe there's foster to adopt. So many things, so many different avenues. We all have similar stories and none of our stories are the same. So a lot of different things, but yeah, I think that defending is definitely a phase in adoptee fog because at the end of the day you make a choice to not acknowledge how adoption, just like in denying and just like in disengagement, you're making a choice to not include adoption as part of your development as a person. And the last one we're going to go over, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna do a part two on this. Either next Tuesday or maybe I may do a pop-up show. I might be a little bit busy this weekend, but I'll see if I can fit in a show. Damn, that's rough. Great way to put it. Being forced to be a daughter, but not yourself. Yeah, man, it was a little rough, but it is what it is. You just learn how. I mean, you just live every day. Honestly, I still can't believe how long it's been since we've been out of high school. And I'm like, what? That long? Like for real? And I get to a point where it's just like, okay, and everyone should get to a point where it's just like, do I truly know who I am? Do I truly know what I like? Do I truly know, who I am outside of this adoption? And I think that the goal of coming out of adoptee fog is to be able to express or to be able to um, embrace who you are, even in the midst of adoption, because with adoption, you're literally placed in an environment where you're meeting somebody else's need. And although you're getting your physical needs, or maybe geographical, or however you want to call it, where you're getting the shelter, the food, the shoes, you're getting those surface levels basic needs met. The most important needs that adoptees have are their emotional needs. And I think because it's not a, it's not a need such as, oh, you're hungry, here goes an apple. Oh, you're hungry, here goes a steak. Here goes some, fried fish. Here goes some spaghetti. Here go,
Mhm.
it's something that you can directly fix. Emotional needs and adoptees are not a direct fix. They are not it takes time, it takes patience. You already need to have patience to deal with children, but it definitely takes someone who is going to get in the ring and fight with you. And not necessarily fight with you, but someone who is going to, get in the ring and understand you. They're going to understand who you are by learning you, right? We're supposed to, when you marry someone, you're supposed to join and know them and marry them and dwell with them in knowledge, right?
Mhm.
And so I always kind of equate adoption to kind of like a marriage between children, and it's like an arranged, family. Like this
Mhm.
is an arranged family, literally. Like there are arranged marriages, there are arranged families where we're making arrangements from you to move from this area to now be placed in this area. And the only way you're going to get to know each other is by, observation, is by being able to be having that parent child intimacy, being able to ask those questions, being able to just sit with them when they're quiet, or neither one of you know what to say, or it's the little things and then the big things of seeking out knowledge. The most of your success with an adoptee is going to be interacting with those who've either went through the experience, reading a book like The Primal Wound, seeking out that knowledge, speaking to adoption psychologists or adoption therapists. That those are where you're gonna get your biggest and longest strides when it comes to your relationship with your adoptee. You won't be in the deficit on um, how to dwell with them, because you'll be right in the running on knowing how to do it and where and how to understand them, because you can't jump into a baby's body or a child's body and try to understand it, child. It ain't gonna happen. So, all right, we're gonna get on this last one and then we're gonna get out of here.
For discerning. Adoptee begins to have an awareness of adoption issues and starts to recognize the societal and familial forces at play that have influenced or pressured them to deny or defend, but may still see adoption as mostly positive. Adoptees start to discern the impact of adoption on their life, which is often prompted by a developmental stage or significant life event such as birth, death, marriage, etc.
So discerning. I know for me, discerning came in. I'm not sure if it was after my sister reached out to me or after we went to go visit our mother like be reunited with her since we were, two and three. I
Mhm.
don't know if the discernment. I mean, it came in that phase of life, where it's just like, wow, this is really part of my life too. You know what I mean? Like it's like I had this adopted life where we have family reunions every summer. We go to North Carolina, go to Connecticut, we go, we have our routine. And then it was just like, and I have a family outside of this, and I think that it was never brought up because it was just like, I only know how to manage this household. I don't know how to manage you and your biological family too, because I didn't sign up to do that. So I feel as though we never really had those conversations because things were, I don't want to say unraveling, but things were revealing themselves at a faster rate than my parents probably expected it to. And so because I went with it, child, I was like, wait, hold on. My sister? Oh yeah, we need to meet. My mother? Yeah, we need to come up there. My like, and I was at an age I wasn't a teen. I mean, I wasn't like 13, 14. I was literally of age. I was 18, 19 years old when these things were happening. So not only was I becoming an adult, not only was, I pretty much going into college and discovering myself as an adult, as an adoptee, as someone in college, I also was meeting my biological family. So that was another, like it says, it has to be some type of life event that happens that brings this awareness to you. So I think my discerning phase of the fog was definitely when I was being introduced and was being contacted by biological family, where it was just like, I have to be honest about how this is affecting me as a person, like how this whole experience isn't affecting me as a person. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it, I had to go to a therapist to sort those things out, because it really brought a lot of emotions out of me that weren't always quite good. And so I had to go see someone to be able to regulate the emotions, because it was like a part of my life that I couldn't share with another part of my life. And I felt very conflicted about that. Still do to this day. In some instances, I feel very conflicted about being able to share what happens in my biological family life with my adopted family. And I
It's
don't know.
funny you say that because at my brother's repast, um, which was in December last year, my cousin, she asked me like had I found my birth parents. It shocked me
Mm,
because I never really. She probably remembers that because probably from my mom talking about it, right?
mhm,
So I was like, yeah, I've met them. We're still exploring our new our new connection, and we're trying to make sure we at least try to connect and see how things are going. But it just really shocked me that she asked because besides my mom, no one ever asked,
mm.
like in my family, unless I brought it up. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's an odd feeling, because again, that's a part of who you are. And when people either tiptoe around it, or act like it doesn't exist, or act
Hmm.
like you shouldn't have emotions towards it, it makes you feel okay. Then it brings you back in the fog. So now you're disengaging. You're like, all right. Who's that? Homer Simpson's when he's backing up into the bushes. It's like, all right, now I'm gonna disengage. Now I'm gonna, deny that I feel some type of way about my biological family being a part of my existence at this point. Now I'm gonna defend, being able to live this life with my adopted family, and defend, what they have done and who they are to me and how they've been there for me.
Hmm.
But at some point you do have to get to a discerning stage in your life where you have to be honest about how adoption has affected you as an adult. And these 4 stages are the light stages. We're going to get into the heavy stages next week, 5 through 8.
That was light.
uh,
uh,
we're going to get through 5 through 8, where it says phases 5 and 6 have potential to overwhelm the adoptee, but are necessary along with phases 7 and 8 in setting one up to continue coming fully out of the fog and onto the healing path. And so, how they say it gets worse before it gets better, right? You think the first 4 phases are bad, and then it's just like, whoa, now I'm getting caught up in this whirlwind of these 4 phases, and I don't even know, one of them is drowning, child. When you drowning,
is
you
that how you felt when your sister contacted you? Like that
did I feel like I was drowning?
you were overwhelmed or
Yes, I definitely was overwhelmed. But again, I felt as though this is a part of my life that is not welcomed. And so I have to keep this part of my life over here. And
Mhm.
so that was a daunting feeling, because in my mind, if you're going to accept me, accept all of me. Don't just accept the parts of me that make you feel good, make you look good, make you, you know, um, that give you this image, and you're not wholeheartedly addressing the issues that the child has. Um, and so it was overwhelming, but and it felt it was a good feeling too, because it
Mhm.
was just like, now I'm starting to meet my family. What I find overwhelming, honestly, is that we met I met my biological mother. I met the my cousin who was in that picture in my life book, and the one who reached out to me on
Mhm.
Facebook. I met my biological grandmother. I met all of them, and none of them are no longer here on earth. And so I believe that, it was meant for me to meet these matriarchal women in the family. And now I feel like I'm the next matriarchal, like the next oldest, because we getting up there, child. You know, the next
Pause.
well, figure in the family. And we just met our youngest brother. It'll be 2 years coming up this summer.
Mhm.
And so sometimes that's an overwhelming feeling of knowing that, like, even my sister the other day, she's like, for my birthday, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to be around you. Like, you know what I mean? So now it's like, oh, child, now I got to plan. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do that. Now I got to put this together. Now I got to, and sometimes that's an overwhelming feeling, because, I am not, I love my siblings dearly, but I'm not our mother. Like, I'm a sister, and I'm your sister, and I'm an older sister, and I don't have an older sister or older brother to lean on, or to just be like, oh, can you help me out, with this, or can you, I don't have that. And sometimes that's overwhelming. I'm gonna just be honest right now, right here. That's overwhelming. And so, although the biological family is now we just have cousins and probably other aunts and things that we never really connected with, but all the siblings, we have all connected, and we all have relationships, and we all still see each other and meet up, and try to, not try, but we keep those relationships going. And so for me, that's the overwhelming part at this stage in my life. Nieces and nephews, our family is really growing. And sometimes I'm just like, okay, like, how do I fit this into my life? Like, I probably won't go to the family reunion this year in my adopted family, because I want to spend time with my, sisters and my nephews and nieces, and splitting that time that adoptive family used to have with no interruptions. And now it's just like, oh no, I probably won't come this year, I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna do, like, that is just always gonna be an uncomfortable seat that I sit in, because again, it just wasn't welcomed. And it just sucks sometimes, because I can't be excited about those things. It's just like I gotta, kind of keep them under wraps. And then when I don't go to an event in my adopted family, I'm looked at as the bad person. Well, you weren't there last year, or you didn't. And it's just like my life is just unfolding in different directions now. And
They were like, "Oh, you were too busy to come," and
yeah, now it's just like, God, like, not the guilt trip. Fog. You're throwing me into the fog. Like,
it's funny you say that because, um, my birth mother, father, and grandmother passed away, and I got to meet them before they passed away.
mhm.
And like I've been, listen, I'm addicted to relative race. I've been watching it all the time.
It's good though.
Literally every other day, I'm watching a video, and to see how heartbroken those people are when they find out, like,
Yeah,
their one of their relatives is no longer living.
yeah, they just missed them.
Yeah. Um, I'd probably be the same way. Like, I probably, if I wouldn't have, um, took the initiative to actually try to find my parents. And ironically, my grandmother lived like 2 miles from where I lived in Detroit.
What? You never.
Yes, never knew it. Um,
Another thing, man. We be so close, but because we
uh,
kids, we don't even know. We don't even know they down the street. My brother said the
yeah.
same thing. Like our mom, I always used to see her up the street, and I'm like, "You remember that? Like what? Mm, 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 mm. Right up the street, man." But yeah, like I think again, you can't tell me that God isn't real. Like, you know what I mean? I had to speak at my grandmother's funeral. I was like, I don't even know this lady. What y'all want me to say at this funeral?
Wow.
What am I supposed to say? You can't choose your family. Love them while they're here. You know, I just had to make a whole. I didn't know what is. I didn't even know what her favorite color was. Okay, I didn't know not a lick, not one detail other than she had Melissa and Melissa had me. Like that was the only thing I knew. But they wanted me to speak at her funeral. But I feel like God makes no mistakes. He allows things to happen the way that they're supposed to happen. And who am I to question it?
Hmm.
But I just really thought that that was interesting. But yeah, he allowed these people to stick around and stay around long enough for us to be able to meet them, to say hello, to give a hug, to do something with them. And those who don't get that opportunity, I still feel as though God still spins the block for them in some way, shape, or form. There is still something that is very specific between that adoptee and their biological mom, father, grandmother. There are always stories where you hear, um, a sister or a brother, which would be your uncle or aunt, say, your mom spoke about you all the time. You still experience them through a family member. However, I know that not being able to see them face to face has to be a an emotional, feeling. And I can say that I was blessed enough to be able to reunite with my mother before she passed away. Burying her and planning a funeral for her was also an outer body experience. Um, that's another thing adoptees have to go through. You got to go through a few deaths. We got to grieve. Okay, we can be grieving. All right, we be grieving because you gotta grieve your biological parents. Then at some point you gotta grieve the adoptive parents, and if there are siblings and aunts and uncles on both, like it is grief. It is grief. And again, these are areas in which adoptive parents should run and get literature, help, therapy, a second opinion, mentor group, like something where you're able to see the other side and be able to get the help for yourself as well. Because children, no matter if they're yours, biologically or not, they will change you. Children will reflect onto you who you are without you even really realizing it. Okay. You're like, why is she always turning her neck like that? Like, what's wrong with her? Like, girl, that was your neck 20 years ago. Like, you know what I mean? So we gotta be real with ourselves and realizing that we can't escape life without getting some type of extra education in no matter what field we're trying to be successful in. And parenting is one of those fields. Stop letting people tell you, well, there ain't no book on parenting and I did the best. No, you didn't. You could have did better. I mean, I accept the best, I guess, but at some point, there's an opportunity for you to be better, and it's never too late. You know how they say it's never too late for you to go back to school. Be people 60 years old up in there getting their degrees, So I know if people can go and dedicate their time to a routine of going to class and studying and taking tests and things of that nature, being a parent is an everyday role where you can better yourself every day. It's not you don't got to be in a rush. It doesn't have to, it's not something that you're graded on. However, I always say that emotional intimacy that you have with your children will be the measure of your parenting in how your children come back to you when they're older. If your children want to be around you when they're older, then that means that you've passed the emotional intimacy test. But if they don't want to be around your behind when you get older, then that's your sign that maybe there could have been some things that could have been done differently on both ends. But adoptees always, we believe that the adoptive parents are responsible for figuring that out, because you chose it. So you would think that as children, we would think that you're equipped and you're equipping yourself with everything that you need in order to fulfill this choice that you decided on. But even those choices aren't as cut and dry as we may think that they are as the adoptees.
Yeah, um I think most adoptive parents are little angels from the
Hmm.
aspect of they didn't have to adopt you, right? They could have went and lived their own life. They could have, but they got some kind of awareness or calling, right, where they wanted to have children. And so um like you're right, like they need to. And nowadays it's so easy to find out anything. Like you got YouTube, you got books, you know, there are people that have groups,
Yeah.
it's so many different ways to get knowledge, right? And the people who say that they try harder.
Yeah.
you know, um I've never been a parent, so I mean I don't know what it's like, but
Oh, every day I'm a parent. Okay. Every day you are, I mean, and if you want to be a progressive parent who is intuitive and you take a step back, like what can I mean, because it comes before you are a parent, right? Even before I became a parent, it was like, okay, how can I be better today?
mhm,
What can I learn today? And so it flows into parenthood if that's the kind of person that you naturally are anyway, right? And
mhm,
so as a parent, I'm always like, okay, should we be talking about this? How is my tone with this? She's quiet. I'm just gonna give her space. Like, and then being an adoptee who is now a biological parent, not to say that I overthink things, but I do, because I was raised in a non-biological home, whereas she's raised in a biological home.
mhm,
So there are a lot of things that I still carry on that my parents instilled in me, my adopted parents instilled in me and parenting me. But there are also things that we leaving that at the door. We not, and I'm just being serious. Like I'm
mhm,
just, as far as even things like not wanting to get the education and knowledge, right? That's something that I leave at the door because I feel like I'm required to do that if I want to be the best parent for my daughter.
mhm,
I'm not going to say, "Oh, well, you're just going to have to accept me how I am because I'm your mother." No. No, she don't. She actually really don't. She don't have to do that. Like, and I know the reality of that. So I'm not going to get set in this fixed mindset just because I'm the older individual in this, parent relationship,
mhm,
And so it don't even have to be things like that. Yeah, they stay at the door because it's like I know that being in that fixed mindset made me fade to the black. And I don't want that to be a action that my daughter takes because I wanted to stay ignorant or I wanted to be stuck in my old stubborn ways. You know what I mean?
mhm,
That's something that I refuse to take into parenting. Um, and there are other things, but it's just a different experience too. It's odd sometimes. Like it's weird. It's just like sometimes you gotta step back and just sit down on a couch and be like, Lord, what is of my life? Like, like you just You just gotta like take a few deep breaths, some
Hmm.
good breathing techniques, um, and really take it all in sometimes. And sometimes you just need a good day of sleep to sleep it off sometimes. Like there are certain things, things that you do to kind of get yourself through it. Sometimes you just need to go for a walk or a drive. Sometimes you really need to touch grass because you need to be part of that earth vibrational, you feeling depleted. And, so there are a lot of things that, I do to kind of get through this experience, therapy and talking about it and having these lives. But there's a lot of times where I sit back and be like, this is really my life. Like, yeah, this is it. this, is, this is it. Come a long way and got a even longer way to go. So, just
Hmm.
still up for the ride. But it has made me who I am, and it has given me so many different life experiences too. It allows me to see the world not just one dimensional. You know, I know the hood, I know the suburbs. I know how to unfortunately code switch where there's a lot of black folks who don't know how to do that. They just want to act a fool everywhere they go. You know what I mean? I know how
Hmm.
to blend in. I know how to do business. I've traveled all over, whether it's personal or in professional life. I just don't think that, I was involved in extracurricular activities, play sports all the way to the college level. Like, I just don't think that I would have had these experiences had I probably stayed in North Jersey. So, adoption really offered me a great life, but it also allows you to have that introspection and to get out of the adoption fog, and that's what we're talking
Hmm.
about. When you don't find that pathway to healing of how to acknowledge your adoption and who you are as a person, when you don't want to acknowledge and you disengage and you defend and you deny and you're not discerning of when that actually happens for you, then phases 5 through 8 is going to be hard. 5 through 7, I should be, because eight is supposed to be healing, right? So 5 through 7 is going to be really hard, and sometimes you stay in these phases for longer than you care to.
Hmm.
But I think that everywhere you are, you're meant to be there for a reason, season, anyway. So, but we're going to get to the closing thoughts because we're going to do a part two a little bit later on. I don't know if I'm gonna do it on a Tuesday show. If I'm a this weekend is pretty jam packed for me. So I'll definitely keep you guys updated. I do want to find. It was a video on TikTok. I know that because I tried to download it and it wasn't a feature on one of his videos, and I was like, oh, he don't want nobody to have the good information. Okay, I'm gonna have to find it. I don't know if I saved it. Maybe I saved it, but the reasons why children go into adoption, and the biggest percentage was definitely neglect, but he breaks down how neglect is classified in so many different ways that anything could pretty much be neglect.
Yeah, because they probably have it classified or identified differently in each state, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, what one state may consider neglect, another state may not really look at it that way.
Right.
And it's not saying that, it's wrong or it's right or wrong. It's just how they identify it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's, I'll say my final thought. Shout out to the governor of Maryland for
Yes.
signing that bill for the adoption reform. And that was spearheaded by a delegate who's an adoptee.
Mhm.
So he drove that point home, and that shows you that, I'm not a big politics person, but that shows you that it can work if you get the right movement on it. Um, and I really enjoyed today's show, especially I really love the videos because you find different videos. I mean, I'm not on TikTok, so like if I see a TikTok video, it's probably through like a YouTube short.
Mhm.
So, um, those videos on TikTok are hilarious. Some of them.
Right.
And I was following that guy. You said you follow. It's a white guy.
Adopted.
Talks about. Yeah, 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 yeah. He's funny.
Yeah,
Um, he talks. He had one video.
he's passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, why do you need to know how many days somebody was in foster care before they was adopted? When people posting pictures about that, like that's not that's not something to glamorize. That's sad actually that nobody has adopted somebody in so many days.
Mhm.
Um, but I enjoy the videos. I enjoy the recommendation for books. Definitely enjoying the Primal Wound book. Hey, Latanya, what's going on?
Hello, hello, hello.
Uh, and I'm hoping to finish this book real soon. Maybe we can talk about it on a live one day.
I'm down. I'm down.
Um,
I always love. I enjoy giving the gift of literature. So maybe we can have a free giveaway,
yeah, that'd be cool.
and we'll send someone the book.
Hmm.
Every time I'm giving something away, it's a book. I feel like that's the best gift you can give somebody. It's a book.
I
I just
thought about buying a. You can give somebody an ancestry DNA. I thought about buying one of those and
mm,
giving those one of those away. Maybe when I come back from, because I'm going to Detroit in June, so
okay.
maybe after that when I come back.
Okay.
Um, and
Yeah.
my cousin's getting married, so I'm gonna be in the wedding.
Nice, nice. Gonna be looking
Yeah.
sharp. Well, yeah. My final thoughts. Thank you so much, Leon. I appreciate you for being here. You don't have to, but you choose to, and so I appreciate you so much, especially for furthering your journey, your adoption journey, and your biological roots. It's not always an easy journey. Sometimes you feel like it's a very lonely journey. Um,
Hmm.
you're at the phase in your life where unfortunately those whose life that you were placed inside of are no longer here. And so I can understand why you are going on this journey too, because at the end of the day, you're still here and your story is still living and unfolding. And
Hmm.
that is just what we experience as adoptees. And so my final thoughts within the adoptees navigating through the fog is what I say all the time before I even had the adoptee foster channel. It is be real with yourself so you can be real with everybody else. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't live by any other motto. Well, I live
Hmm.
by a lot of different mottos, but that is my number one. Be honest with yourself or be real with yourself so you can be real with everyone else. I think that it's a simple saying, but it's a very heavy task. It's
Hmm.
something that a lot of people can't accomplish in this lifetime. There are people who are still living for the applause of others. There are still others who are looking for the validation from other people that don't have to give to you. There are people who are still doing things because their family said it was the right thing to do, and they're not living their full life. They're not being
Hmm.
true to themselves. And being true to yourselves means if I want to say no this time, I'm going to say no. I'm not going to feel guilty for not saying no. I'm not going to feel guilty for putting my mental peace and happiness above others. I'm not going to feel guilty for those things. I'm going to acknowledge the things that made me who I am, and I'm going to acknowledge the avenues and the way that God allowed me to get here. And I'm not going to blame him, and I'm not going to say it's his fault, and I'm not going to say that. I'm going to embrace and acknowledge all the makings of me, not
Hmm.
just the parts that are pretty to look at, the parts that are ugly to look at, the parts that are messy to dig into, the parts where, I just really don't understand the answers, but I'd rather have an answer than for my soul to be aching day after day after day, not knowing. It's okay to want to know things. We were once children who were put here to be curious. God wants us to be curious. He wants us to be fruitful and multiply. Well, the only way you're going to be fruitful, okay, we ain't always talking about sex, y'all. All right. All right. Sex is not always the fruitful part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But in order to be fruitful, you do have to be curious. You have to be curious. How are you going to get to the fruit? How are you going to bear a seed? You got to be a little curious. And I was always that curious child, right? And so don't stray away from the things that make you who you are. Don't make people make you feel like those things don't matter or those are the bad parts of you. Be real with yourself so you can be real with everyone else. If adoption is affecting you, if adoption has had an effect on you, whether good or bad, talk about it. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and make others feel good while you suffer inside. No, be honest about it. Because if not, you're going to get caught in this fog. And again, fog, we know you can't see too far in the future. You got to get that fog cleared up so you can see your future clearly and it be a peaceful future. I was talking to my biological father today, and me and him both was like, yeah, peace. That's the most important thing. Peace. Like, that's all we want is peace. No matter what is going on around us, we will dwell in peace. No matter where we are, who's in our lives, there has to be peace. If there's no peace, there's no me. Because if it's anything other than peace, it's too expensive, right? And so that's how you have peace, though. You know who you are, and you become, accepting of who you are, good, bad, or ugly. And once you're able to do that, you're able to be real with other people, because now you're not holding up no facade. People are able to accept advice and uh, just your conversation and your presence in your company, because they know that you're not trying to make them feel good. No, they're going to be real with me because they're real with themselves. You could tell when somebody's real with themselves because they have nothing to prove to anybody else. They're not trying to prove it to anybody else. They don't want to belong to this group. They don't want to belong to that group. Child, you lucky if you could catch them on a good day. People who are real to themselves don't really lend themselves to other people as freely as other people who are not real with themselves. And so sometimes you got to catch up with them people. Okay. But I am
Because my social battery does not allow me to do that.
okay. Just why am I here? Like, I've been here long enough. Now it's time to go. I just did that a couple weekends ago. I was at a festival and I was like, I've seen enough people. I don't want to sit out here to the wee hours till the sun goes down. I'm going home now, right?
Mhm.
And I could have missed some good songs, but at the end of the day, I was missing my feet being kicked up, my peace and quiet, right? I had enough of being out. That was enough. So yeah, we were able to know when enough is enough, and we know when to lead a party. Okay,
For sure.
we know when to lead.
Amen.
So with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us. I will be live again tomorrow night at 9 p.m. with the Men's Forum, where we talk about all things relationships, current events. We don't point the fingers, but we do point out behaviors, repetitive behaviors, and things that can be slightly changed or adjusted in order for us to be better people. Again, y'all know I like to be better. I have not arrived. If I still have breath in my body, there's a time for me to be better. And it's not trying to be perfect, but we're progressing. And so definitely join us tomorrow if you like to join the conversation or just watch. You can do that as well. But we will be back next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Next Tuesday is the 5th. Cinco de Mayo. Come with your margaritas and your tacos and all of that. I had me some burrito tacos today, child. They were so good. Oh
Taco Tuesday.
yes.
My favorite day. And
Tacos.
tequila.
Dang. The show's at 9. I think we'll be good. I think, you know what, I'll just buy things to just have at home. Cause yeah, I'll just buy my little I like these margaritas. They're in a glass. I forget the brand. I forget what the brand is, but they're like margarita. My aunt got me turned on to them. They're like margaritas in a glass, and they come in strawberry or regular flavor. Dang, what are they? I forget. And sometimes I'll be drinking them on here, try to forget. But next Tuesday is Cinco de Mayo, so definitely I don't know. Do I have a sombrero? I gotta do something to get into the. I'm gonna have a new hairstyle by Tuesday, y'all. So
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna have to get a sombrero or something. Well, happy birthday to your mom in advance, Latanya.
Happy
74.
birthday.
Okay, it is a blessing. That's somebody with wisdom. All right,
For
that's
sure.
some wisdom. All right, guys, we're gonna get up out of here. Again, next week we're gonna go over part 2, which is phases 5 through 8 of the adoptee fog, learning how to navigate through that. But until then, thank you guys, and we gonna bounce. See you guys next week.
Deuces.